Welcome to the Pawsome Companion, where pets are part of our family. I'm your host, Joanna Herrera, the founder of Coco and Bondi. I'm very excited to interview experts and pet owners to share their stories and insights so you can use them to take care of your babies.
When something is off, you feel it too. This is Georgia. She loves walks, beach runs and chasing the neighbour's sprinkler. But lately her limp got worse. Slower mornings, less tail wagging and no zoomies. Her humans tried everything. Then they found Rosehip Vital Canine, a natural anti-inflammatory backed by science. Just weeks later, Georgia was back on her feet. More comfort, more freedom and more of the dog they love. Because when your best mate's in pain, you'll do what it takes. Rosehip Vital. For joints, for life, for love. Visit rosehipvital.com.au to find out.
Hello, Travis. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So, thank you for joining us at the Pawsome Companion podcast season 3. I want to say a short introduction about Travis. Travis is an Emmy-winning writer, multimedia artist, and associate professor of communication. Travis is not only a creative storyteller and passionate educator, but he and his wife have also spent over 20 years rescuing and rehoming animals. His book, Nobody Told Me My Legs Don't Work, Journey of Down Dog, is a moving tribute to his beloved dog called Jet, who lost the use of her back leg due to a spinal stroke. Told through Jet's eyes, the story mirrors Travis' own experience with paralysis and shines a light on resilience and conditional love and finding joy in every moment. Travis, we are honored to have you in our show.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here.
Thank you so much for taking your time. I know that you are in Florida. So what time is there, Travis?
It's almost midnight here.
Okay. So I would love to understand a little bit more who are you, what you do, and why you wrote this book.
Well, I am a communication professor and a writer.
Okay.
And I wrote this book really to share the story of our dog Keegan and her just amazing spirit through the process of losing her ability to walk and our journey to try to get her back on all four paws, and what an experience it was, a learning experience, and how much it taught my wife and I just about the amazing spirit of animals.
And I know that you are working in rehoming and rescuing animals. Is that something that you started doing after this happened to Jet, or it was before that?
It was before and during.
Okay.
We've since downsized from about 9 rescues to 2.
Wow.
And we started a family. Well, we have a son now, but we're always on the lookout for any type of animal that needs help. From the other day on a walk, I rescued a baby bunny that was in the clutches of a cat's mouth. So we're always on the lookout for animals that need help. But it was quite a journey. And when Keegan had her stroke, I think at the time we had 3 dogs and maybe 3 or 4 cats in the house. So full house while all of this was happening.
So what happened so the name of the dog is Jet, which is your dog.
It's Keegan, actually, is the dog that had the spinal stroke.
Okay. So
Yeah.
how long was Keegan when that happened?
So she was 7
Okay.
when this happened, and I came home at lunch to find her unable to come down the stairs with the rest of the dogs, and so I knew something was wrong right away, and ended up taking her to our vet at lunch. And by the time I went back after work, she was unable to to move her back legs at all. And, at 7,
Yeah.
she hopefully had a long life ahead of her. And so that started our journey of trying to, to rehab her, so she could live
Better life.
a long and healthy life again.
Yeah. So, so, so when this happened to you guys, what was the first thing that you thought, like, in terms of getting her recovered, or what are the things that came to your head straight away?
It all happened so fast. It's such a blur. And one of the reasons it was very cathartic to sit down after all of this had happened to write this book and kind of relive the emotions, because at the time it was just, we didn't know what was happening. And as it works with all doctors, animal doctors and people doctors, right? It's a process of elimination of what's happening. And so it was, the first few weeks was just trial and error to find out what had happened. And part of that involved taking her to an animal neurologist, which at the time we didn't even know was a thing that existed. And it was all of it was just so scary. And, we just kept on keeping on, so to speak, until we were able to first get a diagnosis, which was officially a spinal stroke, where some pieces of her cartilage had somehow entered into her spinal cord and blocked the flow of blood to the back, to her whole hind side. And so that was step one, was getting some sort of diagnosis. And it was so scary, and it just kind of happened so fast, but yet it felt like it was taking
Horrible.
forever at the time. Everything
Yeah.
was moving in slow motion. You want answers now. And we just had to wait and be patient. And, she was, stuck at the vet with all sorts of IVs, and they kept having to do blood work. And so it was just, it was sad to see her like that, and we felt so helpless. And once we had an official diagnosis, then I was able to set about trying to find, some way to try to rehab her. After the diagnosis, one of the doctors said, "You should put her down. She's not going to have a quality of life." And the humane thing would be to put her down.
Yeah.
But I've never been one to take no for an answer, so
I
that
know.
then set us off on our amazing journey to try to find a way to rehab her.
Yeah, and I know that having a dog is like having a child, having a pet. It's become so part of your life that it's like, how I'm gonna do this to my dog, right? And also in the book, you tell a story of the dog and someone else, and it reflects your story as well. Is that okay? It's like that's what happened in the story of the book, or give us a little bit more context of what is in the book that you want to tell us as an audience, or people who read in the book.
Sure. So, ultimately, we did find a doctor who worked with animals that had spinal cord injuries.
Yeah.
And it was about from our home. And so we, a lot of trips and a lot of times where we had to leave her for a few days so she could do intensive therapy with the doctor. And little by little, over the span of a year, we had these baby steps, literally, as she slowly began to regain the use of her back legs. And when we had her home, we had 2 to 3 hours of rehab that we would do with her. So we would drag ourselves out of bed at 5 in the morning, and the first thing we would do was put the coffee on and head downstairs and do a number of different rehab exercises that the doctor had prescribed. And then at the end of the day, we would finish late at night, another hour to an hour and a half of rehab exercises with her. And just step by step, little by little, we started to see improvements. And eventually these improvements led to big steps. She was in a wheelchair for a while so she could get around. And then eventually we were able to get her out of the wheelchair. And not to spoil the end of the book, because really the book is more about the journey than than how it ended. But it ended with her able to walk again, never quite with the stability that she had before the stroke, but she was able to run around and live a happy, healthy life for another 6 years until she passed when she was 13. So
Wow.
it
So
was a
did you
successful
decide?
journey and through.
So did you decide to write the book after that happened to her or through the process?
Afterwards. We
Okay.
were just so, yeah, we were so busy with all of the rehab that I don't know when I would have find time to
Yeah,
write. So then
absolutely.
it was afterwards, long after actually, because we had a number of animals in our home at the time, and so life went on with them as well. And so while we were spending all this time rehabbing Keegan, we also had a whole house of rescues that we had to give our time and love to as well. And so there just was no time to write at that time. And so um, so years later, I sat down and said, I want to tell this story. I want to tell the story of just her amazing spirit through it all, and the story of all our other rescues, because each one of them had an amazing story as well. One of our dogs, named Jedi, who I think you were referencing
Yes.
earlier.
Yes.
Yes. So Jedi's story coming back to us is quite amazing. We we first saw him running down our street with a broken chain hanging off him, and so we realized, he
Needed
belonged
help.
somewhere, and so we called for him, and he came to us, and so we took him in for a few nights, and we asked everyone in our neighborhood, do you know who this dog belongs to? And the mailman eventually found him, the owners, and so we took him back. And then we'd realized soon after, as we kind of drove by this house, that the dog was just always chained to a tree in the backyard. And so then a few weeks later, we had this historic ice storm that came through our region. And then lo and behold, this dog broke free from his chain again and showed up back on our doorstep covered in ice.
Oh my God.
And so we realized, we can't just turn this dog back over who's just left outside in the snow and the ice, but we also couldn't steal the dog. So we turned the dog into the Humane Society, and we told them if no one claims him in, the amount of time that it takes, I think a week, we will adopt the dog. So they called back in the week, and they said, okay, the dog is still here, but you don't want to adopt him because he has stage 3 heartworms out of stage 4.
Yeah.
And we said, we do want to adopt the dog, and we immediately started the dog on heartworm treatments, and it worked. And so Jedi, we named him Jedi for the Star Wars movie Return of the Jedi, because he
Okay.
returned to us when he needed help. And this dog had been abused, so it was very fearful. If you reached down to him too quickly, he would cower or try to bite you. So this dog had had some trauma in his life, and
Absolutely.
yet he knew to come to us. He knew to know where to find safety. So it was an amazing rescue, and we had some wonderful years with him as well.
Okay. So you are in this book, you are telling a lot of stories about how you take care of those animals and what were their stories. So what would you say around like resilience and those people that are probably having the same situation with animals that have any illness or like are having any issues with them in terms of health?
Yeah, it was interesting because this had happened when this is before social media, when Keegan had her stroke. And so, at the time, the message boards was kind of the form of social media. And we found some amazing websites that had some message boards with people that were having experiences similar to what had happened with Keegan and her stroke. And so I kind of gravitated to all the people that had had success with rehabbing them, and I was looking for a theme. And the theme was staying positive around your animal, and not getting too down, And so I took that as, this is the number one thing we have to do is stay positive for for her and for our family, and that kind of just set us on our trajectory to then framed our journey with her rehab of staying positive. We're going to make the best of this situation and try to, make her as comfortable as possible at all times. And so, as dire as situations may be, I urge people to try and stay positive and try to look for that potential solution. And unfortunately, we were lucky and we found an amazing doctor, and we were able to rehab her injury. And I know that all spinal cord injuries are different, and not everybody will have the same results that we had. Yeah. But we were prepared either way. If it didn't work, we were going to stay positive, and we were going to find a way to make life as normal as possible and stay positive. And animals are so reliant on us for everything, the domesticated animals. And so we owe it to them to do these things, to stay positive and to exhaust every potential method that we might have to try to keep them healthy and keep them safe.
Yeah. So how many animals do you have now, Travis?
So we are down to 2. We have 2 rescues, 1 dog and 1 cat. One came from a humane society shelter, and the other came from an organization that does what we used to do. It was, if somebody found an animal that needed a home, they'd bring them to us, knowing that we would take them in and try to rehome them. And so that's where we got our dog from, was an organization that does that. And so that, we were young, and we were able to do that, to keep up with the many animals that we had at the time. And so life has settled down for us now. But like I said, we're always on the lookout to help in some way, shape, or form, whether it's helping with our time, with donations, or, as I said, the reason I wrote the book was to get the message out of our journey with animals, and hopefully spread that positivity to anyone else that might need it.
Yeah. So what are you currently doing with that book? Are you selling it online, or how do you raise the voice and share the book and what you have experienced? Have you done anything about it?
Yes, it is available online. You can find it in print or digital form, really at any online bookseller, Amazon. You can find it on my website as well. And I've done some fun giveaways online, had fun on social media, that sort of thing. And I like to share, images and some inspirational stories on social media as well, that hopefully will lead people to find the book.
Yeah. So have you met anyone that have the same situation, or have you got any contact with someone that have had the same experience that you have been able to help? Or
not in person, but I have met other people online that have had similar situations with their animals. I posted a video on YouTube that shares a little bit about Keegan's journey and her steps to walking again, and had some amazing feedback on that. People that would post and say, "Oh my goodness, this gives us hope," that sort of thing, which means a lot. And I have a small section in the book about kind of tips and things that we learned along the way when caring for a down dog, which is a dog who's lost the use of their legs. And so I hope that anybody that finds this book, because they're in the same situation, I hope that they find, a lot of those tips helpful as well, because we were, just flying completely blind with no idea of what we were doing. And like I said, this was, before YouTube and social media, finding, so many answers that we were looking for that you might be able to find online now. So it was important to share some of those tips in the book as well.
Is there any couple of tips that you can give us now to those who are watching the episode?
Sure. So we had a basement that we sort of transformed into kind of a special space for Keegan. When she lost the use of her legs, that means she lost the use of a lot of things, her bladder included.
Okay.
So down dogs can typically be a messy affair sometimes to no fault of their own, just because they can't control their bowels and their bladders.
Yeah.
And so what we did with this space is we got large, clear shower curtains and then used duct tape to kind of tape them into the size of this space that we needed. And then we used large, they were kind of like puppy training pads, essentially,
Yeah.
that we would throw over that vinyl. It was like a thicker vinyl. And so she wouldn't kind of poke through it with her claws. And we had lots of messes. And so at the end of the day, we were able to the vinyl protected our carpet. And then all those pads we would just throw. We also ran a load of wash every day that were these
I
pads
imagine.
that then when she would have accidents on the floor. And, it was hard at first because we were like, well, what are we going to do? We have this dog now that can't control her bowels or her bladder.
Yeah.
What in the world do we do? And so we kind of brainstormed and thought, well, this is what we came up with. And that was a lifesaver for our home. So we could, keep her comfortable and keep her near us. So that was a big, tip right there, just how to keep everything clean.
Yeah.
For everybody.
So you allocated a particular space in your house to keep her clean and give her more like a stability or a space for her to stay and for you guys to also obviously not get frustrated as well too much. Yeah. Any other tip?
Yeah, we used what's called a Kong toy.
Oh, yeah.
And you can put little treats or peanut
Yeah.
butter, that sort of thing in there. When a dog loses the ability to walk, then that means they're not mobile. So unless you are able, if you're present to move them around, they either drag themselves or they can't move around. And so life gets very boring for them. And so we were constantly trying to find things to keep her stimulated. And so all the various Kong toys, things of that, chew toys, all these sorts of things that would, when we were gone, give her something to do, because otherwise she was just laying there with nothing to do.
As well.
And we'd put soft music on when we were gone so she would hear voices and that sort of thing. And so everything is about keeping them still stimulated so they don't, they're just not laying there in an empty space with no stimulation and no voices and nothing. So a lot of our worry was what we can do for her when we're not there, instead of, necessarily when we were there as well. So that was a big thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there any like suggestions in terms of medical assistance? Like what are the medical assistance that, for example, if you have this sort of situation, you should go to? Should go to a physio, or what are the medical assistant that a dog that is suffering these sort of things we have to go to? Is there anything? Because if something happened like that to my dog, I wouldn't know unless I take to a closer bed. But is there anything that you can give us in terms of how do you get any sort of information about more what happened to the dog?
We started with our regular vet and kind of deferred to his expertise on what all the next steps were. And that's how we were led to the animal neurologist. And then eventually I didn't get a lot of guidance. And so I had to do a lot of searching on my own, phone calls. As I said, every situation is different. And so one doctor might be able to work with one type of injury, but not another. Get as specific diagnosis as possible. So then you know what type of specialist to look for if you're in that situation. And in the meantime, as I said, everything that you can do to keep your dog comfortable. We largest, most cushiony dog bed that we could, because we knew that she would be no longer up and moving a lot. She would be laying in one spot, and so we wanted to get her as comfortable as possible there. But always, start with your regular veterinarian, and then we never did find out what happened. We have a theory. We had a coffee table that she would like to crawl under. Yeah. And then when she would hear us come home, as dogs are wont to do, they jump up and they want to come greet you. That's one of the things that makes them so wonderful, right? And I think that she may have done that maybe just one time, or maybe over time she might have been under that table and then hit her spinal cord as she was jumping up to greet us. We're not sure, but that was our working theory. So we never did find out what the cause was, but thankfully we were through the different doctors. We were able to find out at least a proper diagnosis, and then we went from there.
Yeah, it's very sad, isn't it? Because sometimes you want to know the cause so it doesn't happen to the dog again, or to another dog, or to another animal, and it's difficult to determine what could happen. But I feel that finding the actual results help you guys to identify, okay, what are the next steps for us to take out the dog of this situation. And yeah, I think it's a beautiful story, and I think we need to share more of this to the community, because sometimes there are people that are having the same situation and they don't know how to react or what to do. And sometimes we just need to feel that we are not the only ones having the same situations. So what will be the thing that you want to leave at the last, saying, like, what message you want to leave to people in general, for those who probably are listening to this podcast, or for those who read the book, like a big message to say to close this episode?
Well, the reason that I titled the book, Nobody Told Me My Legs Don't Work, is because of Keegan's amazing spirit through all of this. And so I think I would just say, we can never discount just how incredible our animals are, and just how much, we took part of our lead from her, and the fact that, she never got down. She was still happy every time we walked in the door. She would show us some time by, even when she was better, she would get so excited when we'd walk in the door that she'd still lose control of her bladder a little bit.
Oh my God.
And so she'd tinkle a little bit, and that was a sign that she was excited to see us. So that was kind of comical. But, just don't discount their spirit and their amazing will to do incredible things. And they just might surprise you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And is there any social media tiles or anything you want to share now, so listeners can follow your Instagram or your account so they can learn a little bit more about the story?
Sure. I think the easiest way is my website, traviscyates.com. And there's lots of information about the book on my website, and lots of pictures. The video that I referenced earlier is on there, and that's a great place to start. And there's a link to find the book on Amazon, so that's the best place to go. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Travis, for sharing your story today, and I appreciate for you to join us at the Pawsome Companion podcast. Congratulations, you guys, to get on board of that and get her through that difficult situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Pawsome Companion. If you have any further questions for our experts, feel free to leave them in the show notes or reach out to me directly. And if you are a pet expert who would love to contribute to this podcast, we will be thrilled to hear from you. Don't forget to follow us, and if you enjoyed today's episode, we will really appreciate a 5-star review. Thanks again, and we will see you at the next episode.